Hello, everybody. Those of you who follow me on social media will know that I regularly share hints and tips, snapshots from the assistant training that I facilitate. These are tips which I hope will enable assistants to excel for their success and for the success of their organisation. So what I've done for you today is put these into a presentation. These are probably the most well received of those tips, and I really hope that you enjoy them. First of all, the perceptions of assistants. How are we seen? A lot of this is to do with how we answer the question, what do you do? An assistant works with their manager for the success of their organisation. You don't work for your manager, you work with your manager for the success of the organisation. I saw a lovely quote the other day when somebody said you work beside your manager. That's, again, a great way of expressing these things. So get your phrase together. I work with the CEO for the success of whatever your organisation is for. You are there, like everybody else, to enable the success of your organisation. Now, I've put a question to attendees on my courses and say, do you know your manager's objectives? You get the odd little hand going up. Some are very sure and some have no idea. The manager and the assistant do the same job. They have the same objectives. They simply carry out different tasks to achieve those objectives. What you do in your daily job is not the less important things, the smaller things. You do different things. Your manager does their speciality things, you do your speciality things. They have their talents, you have yours. Together, that creates an amazing team. So this reinforces what we were saying, that you work with your manager. And yet many people don't know their manager's objectives. You need to know your manager's objectives because they are yours. What I suggest is you have a regular, say, first thing in the morning, a daily meeting with your manager. Again, if you've got more than one manager, it may mean 2 meetings, or you may get them all together. Obviously, the more managers you have, the more difficult it is, but it's still perfectly possible. And we start that meeting, you say, okay, what's our objectives for today? Remember that phrase, what are our objectives for today? On the first day of the week, it might be, what are our objectives for this week? After the financial years, that's what are our objectives for this year? And use that phrase, what are our objectives? This is particularly important if people are working remotely, if managers are traveling. I'll come back to that in a moment. Let me share with you my definition of an exceptional assistant. An emotionally intelligent leader. It's no longer the tea and typing of the old days. You're not just an assistant. You are there working with your manager for the success of the organisation. You are very aware of your own emotions and motivations, but you are also very aware of those of your manager, your colleagues, your clients, and everybody around you. So, what is a leader? Anyone can be a leader. You don't have to be a manager to be a leader. And some managers are definitely not leaders. They're often promoted because they're good at their job, but actually they have no idea how to lead people. And so many managers don't receive management or leadership training. If they've had good leaders themselves, they probably will replicate that behaviour. But if they haven't, they will again replicate that behaviour. And by having good leaders, you get people who are so much more motivated, work harder, go the extra mile, fulfill their potential. Again, a lot of things that we talk about on the training courses that I present. I think it's important as well to know that as an emotionally intelligent leader, we don't judge other people based on our story. Everybody has their own story. You cannot judge others based on our story. Try and see other people's point of view before we make decisions. There's a wonderful phrase in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and I'll come back to that again shortly. It's one of the things we cover a lot in the training. I'm an NLP practitioner, neuro-linguistic programming. The map is not the territory. In other words, unless you've been there, how can you possibly know what it's like? An exceptional assistant always offers their manager potential viable solutions rather than problems. If you are working for a manager and you go to your manager and you say, "This has happened, what should I do?" You're actually giving your manager a problem. How much better if you go to your manager and say, "This has happened, this is what I thought we could do." They may say, "Oh no, that won't work." But it doesn't matter, at least you've offered a potential viable solution. You may even get to the point where you say, "This has happened, this is what I've done." And you may, like sometimes my MD used to say to me, "Oh no, you didn't, did you?" You don't always get it right. My reply in those situations was, "I thought it was the right thing at the time." Because let's face it, none of us make mistakes on purpose. If we keep making the same mistake, then that's perhaps not a good thing, but we do things because we think it's right at the time. Use that phrase, it can be helpful. One of the things that's been a big part of my working life as an assistant was change. The changes I have seen over the years, mainly technology, of course, but social changes, the way companies work. You know, in the 80s, it was a very different time from now. Mental health wasn't really considered important, you know, things like that. I don't think it was even discussed, actually. And a lot of that, part of it, the emotional intelligence, is actually knowing how to deal with change and understanding that it is incredibly important. Change affects every aspect of life. Taking a proactive approach to change is the only way to take charge of the future, either as an individual or as an organisation. Approach it with an open mind and learn to develop its positive elements. Again, a huge part of some of the training courses that I do, because so many organisations are going through this. And it can be very upsetting, unsettling, not just for assistants, but for the managers too. The pandemic caused enormous disruption and nobody had ever experienced anything like it before. And managers were having to run companies with people working from home. People were feeling abandoned sometimes, feeling very nervous, unsure. Oh, it'll be over in 2 or 3 months, we said, optimistically. And of course, that was not the case at all. So as an emotionally intelligent leader, you can take charge of these situations. You can lead the change, make suggestions for how things may work better. Make suggestions to your manager of ways that you could work together more effectively. Tell them how they will benefit. Because if we don't change, we can fail. One very big change situation was when I worked at Granada, and the television industry was changing completely. We had 3 or 4 terrestrial channels when I started there. And then there was digital and satellite came, and suddenly there's hundreds of channels, and we had to become competitive. There were huge changes to the organisation that were very unsettling, very upsetting, but it had to be done. And the company survived and thrived. And I learned a lot from my MD then about benefiting from change, because we came out of it very well. And of course, as an emotionally intelligent leader, you may have to delegate. And of course, certainly your managers will have to delegate. Some managers are not very happy delegating because they like to stay in control. We like to stay in control. When I first had to delegate, I wasn't very good at it because I thought, oh, you know, I don't know how to do this. What if they make a mistake? What if they don't do it right? The trouble with delegation is that although you're giving something to somebody else to do, you still have overall responsibility. And that's why a lot of people are nervous. Lack of trust. But when delegating, it may be better simply to explain the objective rather than explaining the method, because different people work in different ways. So saying to somebody, this is what you need to do, you do A, B, C, D. That may not be the best way for them. So tell people why they're doing something. Explain why it's important, what the deadlines are. And then maybe let them find their best way of doing it. Now, if it's taking them a really long time, if they're really struggling, of course we can make suggestions. But don't assume that people work in the same way as you. We're back again to don't judge other people based on your story. Working styles is a part of the courses that we do. We find out what our working styles are, because yeah, everybody is very different. Sometimes when you're delegating, people will make mistakes. If they do, a bully criticises, a leader will coach. And it's that coaching that enables people to reach their potential, to really excel. Shouting at people when they've made mistakes does not help. It's also illegal. And of course, you probably know the Maya Angelou quote. Generally, people will forget what you say. Generally, they'll forget what you do, but they will never forget how you made them feel. If you make people feel valued, they will reach their potential and they will excel as part of your team, which ultimately leads to the success of the organisation. Coach people. Ask them why they did what they did. Can they understand why that was not right? So help them to find the ways that are not right. Make a really supportive community within your team. So we've agreed communication with your manager is absolutely vital. But oh, how many times have we heard managers say, I'm too busy to talk to you. Assistants go, I need to talk to you. I'm too busy. I'm too busy. If your manager says, I'm too busy to speak to you, you should reply, maybe you're too busy because you're not speaking to me. Because maybe they are doing things that you could be doing. You are going to be making decisions without having checked things with your manager, not understanding what they're involved in, what their priorities are, what the objectives are. By regular, positive, effective communication with your manager, you will both thrive and be more successful. So every day is great. I think if you're working remotely, then make it 2 or 3 times a day because of this not passing in the corridor. Now, tell you a little story about this. When I was working with my MD, we used to have in the diary a daily meeting every morning. Sometimes it may be 5 minutes, sometimes it might be longer. but it was a routine. Now, it didn't mean we didn't speak the rest of the day. Of course we did. We were next door. So we spoke regularly, passing in the corridor all the time, speaking. But we had this time in the morning when we sat down together and we discussed objectives and anything else that was important. Now that would go in the diary to make sure it happened. And I remember one day, there was a big crisis. We have these big crises and my manager had so many people he needed to talk to. So I took myself out of the diary. And after a couple of days, he said, Heather, why haven't we had our regular meeting? I said, well, we have so many people that you needed to talk to. I took myself out so I could put more people in. And I will never forget this. He came to my desk and he said, Heather, never take yourself out of the diary. You are the most important person I speak to. And I thought, oh, yeah, that's very nice. But I thought, no, he doesn't do flattery. This is genuine business. He needs to know what I'm doing. I need to know what he's doing, because we have the same job. We have the same objectives. And if we're not speaking, then we're not working successfully as a team. Another thing that I've mentioned already that I want to come back to are NLP techniques. There are a lot of presuppositions of NLP, some great statements. And NLP is to do with modelling behaviour, building relationships, and great subject, excuse me, if it's something you'd like to look into. Now, one of the qualities, I believe, of an exceptional assistant is their flexibility. I can remember, my boss, I'd do trips for him to America and we booked the flights and the hotels and I'd get meetings in. And then he'd say, Heather, we're going to have to move that trip. And he'd say, oh, for goodness sake, I've done all these arrangements. I get really, really stressed about it. Then I thought one day, the nature of his work is that priorities change like that. My job is to change, is to sort that. And I was a lot less stressed about it. So we do have to be flexible. But we also need to be flexible in our thoughts, the way we deal with people, the way we speak to people. Because as we said, we cannot treat people the same because people are different. And again, these are very invaluable parts of the training that I offer for assistants. There's a lot of people who say, oh, I treat everybody the same. I'm very fair, I treat everybody the same. You can't treat everybody the same because people aren't the same. We have to treat them so that everybody is treated equally, so that everybody comes out with the same result. And that doesn't necessarily mean treating them the same. Okay, so we've already mentioned about the perceptions that people have of assistants, the T in typing, oh, I'm just an assistant, or you're just an assistant. I've had enough when other people say it, but if we say it as well, then all we're doing is reinforcing those negative perceptions that some people have of our profession. And they are, it's, oh, you're just an assistant, you do the T in the typing, you just do the filing, is that it? There's a lot of people have no concept of what the role is. Thank goodness for the World Admin Alliance, who created the Global Skills Matrix. Please go on the Global Skills Matrix website and have a look. It is absolutely invaluable. So what we need to do instead is reinforce the positive perceptions. So that can be things such as how we dress, how we speak, how we answer the phone, but particularly how we react. How we react to criticism, how we react to stresses at work. Again, it's something that we need to talk about in depth, because those perceptions, it's not just about us. It's also, it reflects on your managers and it reflects on all those millions of assistants around the world who share the profession. Now I'm going to momentarily digress and think about minute taking. Again, we do training in minute taking, and something that I think is really key for minute takers is don't try and write your minutes during the meeting, particularly, you know, if you're perhaps using your template for your minutes on your laptop and you're typing your notes in the gaps, you know, typing it in so that it's all there. The temptation is to type the minutes. You can't do that in a meeting because you can't think about how do I phrase this? Do I include that? You haven't got time. In the meeting, you take notes. So even if you're typing, take notes, type notes. You then tidy up and write the summary afterwards, because otherwise you will get extremely stressed. And there are days where we just feel, oh, I've got so much to do. I just don't know where to begin. When you're feeling overwhelmed, simply do the first thing. You know, you might think, oh, I've got this whole away day, this event to organise. Where do I start? Start with the first thing. That might be, let's book the hotel. Let's draw up the list of attendees. And from then, things move naturally. So sometimes just do the first thing. And remember, our greatest weakness lies in giving up. Sometimes things get too much and I just give up. I can't do this. Try just one more time. I mean, there is a point where you think, actually, no, I'm just going to give this up. That does sometimes happen. But sometimes find another way, try a different means. Don't give up too soon. Because sometimes it's our limited perceptions of ourselves that stop us from succeeding. Those limiting beliefs. Oh, I'm not good enough for this. I can't do that. And of course, that goes for training and things. You know, we can't, people say to me, we can't do that. My manager would never do that. That would never work. Oh, that doesn't work like that here. Try it. Tell people how they will benefit. Tell them how this will save them time, make things more efficient. So that's why in all our sessions, you don't just leave with ideas and hints, you have a plan of how to put them into practice. So you've set yourself some smart objectives of how you're going to do things differently. Oh, I've just remembered, I've got one more tip for you from our presentation skills course, and this is probably the most important thing. Don't forget to check your teeth after lunch. Thank you so much, everybody, for staying with me. This is brilliant. If you want to learn more, contact me. You can get all the social media links through the QR code there. Baker Thompson Associates, asoc.co.uk is the website. There's all the details of face-to-face training, online training, books, and all the social media links are there and so on as well. So please do keep in touch. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help you, and thank you very much. Bye, everybody.